Righty. See here, everybody coming through. Well, this is our biggest public breakout room we've had of the EMAC meeting. So thank you everybody for joining us here. We have till about 4:23 before I've got to go back and join the main group. But because we kind of have a larger group here, if you could just put your name and then maybe just something like why you came here into the chat, that would be helpful. And then I think is somebody sharing their screen now? Scott, do you know who's sharing their screen, or?
I can try to look.
Oh, Paul, I think you're.
Yeah,
Paul Edgar, do you mind unsharing your screen, or Scott, could we take that down?
Let me see.
Ask this pin name. Ask. Stop. Oh, there we go. All righty. Yeah, definitely. So maybe as folks are kind of running here, I'll just kind of help facilitate our discussion. We're going to be doing some of the same discussion questions that the EMAC is doing currently. So let me do the first thing. Let me pull up the, I'm going to put a link here in the chat. If you didn't get to see the EMAC materials, there they are. And our first discussion question is about key takeaways from the research document. I threw that document in the chat as well. So I wanted to know from this group, was there anybody here when you're reading through the research document, which kind of takes a look at just the transportation community in general, but then looks at what tolling does for affordability at different projects in the United States? Did anything stand out to folks if you had a chance to look at that document? And you can raise your hand or speak up either way.
And we do have a comment in the chat box, Garrett.
Is it? Yeah, Tim. I mean, besides Tim was just kind of introducing himself.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if. Yeah, that's what I said there. Anyone from the research or what you've seen in other places that have been done for low-income drivers, low-income communities? Hey, Doug.
I didn't see any mention of the benefits that reducing greenhouse gas emissions have on low-income people throughout the entire planet. I think this is an important result of both controlling how much traffic flows, and that should definitely be a consideration. Is if we can get some greenhouse gas reductions out of this process, that's going to be a big benefit to low-income people around the world.
A good point, Doug. So we talked more about that, I would say, like the last 2 months when we looked at neighborhood health and safety, and we looked specifically into there. But I think it's worth mentioning here again, what we showed. So one of the studies showed that I think it was in New Jersey when they went from the like a coin booth toll to electronic tolling, where and thus you reduce the congestion on the highway. That you actually saw the predominantly lower income communities that lived close to the highway and were kind of breathing in that more toxic air because people were backing up on the highway. You actually saw birth rates in children rise because of that better air quality. And then with the toll projects, we will be looking at what does the greenhouse gas levels do for the region? Are we reducing that through this congestion pricing? So I can point you to some documents where we'll hopefully kind of measure that and look at that. And then if you have feedback on how that's being done or how we can improve that, I would love to hear that if you get a chance.
This
Um,
is Chris Gleason. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, Chris, we'll go to you, and then Ray raised his hand as well, but go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but I feel like I have a lot of comments that don't really pertain to this specific meeting, and I don't want to hijack the meeting, but this is my first opportunity to interject into this process at all. I was unaware that these meetings were going on. This is the first one I attended. I've been attending at all, and I don't want to jump in and go along with the agenda and act like I support tolling on 205 or I-5, which I don't. I think is a terrible, terrible idea. How does someone like me fit into this discussion without hijacking and getting us away from the intent of the meeting?
No, it's a good question, Chris. So, and we've been finding through some of these meetings. We had a person from Oregon City last month, a person from Westland the month before, came in just like yourself, wanted to kind of just talk about either opposition or really concerns with tolling just in general. And so I put my email in the chat. Chris, I would love if you sent me an email, or I'll throw my number here as well. We can connect up kind of outside of this to walk through kind of what are those concerns, when are the decisions going to be made, where's that type of information coming, and if need be, we're actually going now through where we're doing like community meetings, neighborhood association meetings, and if there's like you and others that kind of want to group kind of coordinate together, we can come to you and have that conversation to help work through some of those questions if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing your contact info in chat though.
Do you see it's the Garrett.Pryor at?
Oh, okay, no, I got you.
Yep, that's the one. Yep. But as you're listening through here, Chris, if there are thoughts of like impact to low-income drivers or low-income communities in your area, or if you yourself are a part of that, and what could make tolling not an impact to you or possibly a benefit, that would be lovely to hear in our discussion today. Ray, what do you have to say?
Can you hear me well enough?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ray. Thank you.
I have a question about the carpooling part. I think I always see one thing about how carpooling, how you determine carpooling with the example of the turning that Z-Pass Flex to HOV on. But other examples in the document just say qualified carpool vehicles, like for the Dumbarton Bridge and ones in the Bay Area. They don't really say how they determine carpooling. And so I'd like to learn more about how they're actually going to be determining carpooling. Because, for example, like right now at college, at Clackamas Community College, we basically use the Get There website, but there's nothing to really actually confirm that they're actually carpooling, because people could basically abuse the system. And so, yeah, trying to figure out how do you create a carpool system that you can actually make sure people are actually carpooling. So that's a question I have. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's a really good question. So the way they do it in Los Angeles, where there's like, there's a highway, let's say it's 4 lanes wide and one of the lanes is tolled. They do it on your transponder in your car. You will click it on if you have like more than 2 people in your car. And it's sort of based on the honor system, but then there's also like, they have like police or other kind of electronic monitoring that they use to enforce it. But it's a really like, it's not all that effective. There's a lot of people who will like just click on the monitor and could, you know, or unsure basically how many would do that. So that's something I think as a toll program we'll still have to work through because there is a requirement now federally that if there's a high occupancy vehicle that you do some type of discounted toll rate for if there's 2 or more people in the car. So that's something we'll still have to work through on how that actually is done on the tolls that we'll see here in Portland. Do you have a follow-up, Ray?
Just follow up. I was reaching the Control F to see if there's any ban pool discussion in here, and I didn't see ban pool. So I know there's a separate discussion about making carpools, van pools similar or different, because my sense van pool probably has more than like 2 or 3 people. You're gonna have like usually maybe 10 people maybe in a van pool, and so if there's more incentive to encourage van pooling versus carpooling, that's a discussion I'd like to have. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would also say it's kind of to Doug's comment earlier. We talked more about carpooling and van pooling in the transit and multimodal discussions we had in April and May. And so if you go back in some of those research documents, we talk a little bit about it there. I would say where van pooling works different than carpool is a lot of times van pools can be registered through like the DMV or through the state in a lot of states. And so if that's occurring, then if you're like signing up to be a van pool, because you can get reduced rates for like vehicle registration and other things, you could also have that applied to your like reduced rate for tolling. Are there other comments or questions? We're talking mostly about the impacts to low income. So I'd like to talk about that, but we can then also kind of broaden it if need be. Steve, do you have a question or comment? Okay.
Well, as long as we're at quiet zone, what are we gonna do with Stafford Road, Borland Road, and those kind of things on for the offshoot traffic, as well as we were promised money for this situation for I-205 over 10 years ago, and we've been off and on told that the money's there for those projects. What's the deal?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I'll just do that now. I'll just kind of jump into questions that folks have, because I want you to have good use of your time here. So I live in the Stafford Road area. I live in Wilsonville and drive through there, and so I know the area that you're talking about and how it backs up currently, and how there's
So you also know that the people are going 60 miles an hour down Stafford Road.
Yes, 100%. Yep. And so I think you're going to see two things with the tolling project that we'll look at. One, we'll be looking at when you put the congestion pricing and tolling on the highway, and what you do with that is that tolling is going to then pay for the third lane on I-205 and the reconstruction of the Abernathy Bridge. There wasn't money directed there before, but that there's money now. So the hope is, and what we'll look through in our planning, is that if you alleviate the congestion on the highway, that hopefully lessens those congestion on the side roads and in the communities that backs up currently, because that's when it backs up now. And then on those areas where people are trying to avoid the highway, basically because they don't want to pay the toll, in our planning work, we'll try to do our best to kind of simulate that and look at what are those intersections and areas where new cars could be going to now, and adding that. And if those intersections and those areas need additional lanes, sidewalks, bike lanes, safety improvements, that will be then that's identified as mitigation, and then that's paid for with the tolling project.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but you've already promised us those monies over 10 years ago and keep on telling us the money's there. Where'd the money go? And as far as adding the lanes and stuff, well, I think we need to look at that before we would ever toll anyway, because that's the simple thing. Right now, it's too busy because of 205. And you already know that. We've had these meetings before at the grade school or the middle school, and nothing ever seems to come of it. And we're kind of a little offset with tolling as well. So when we're told the money's there and that this is going to happen, and then you bring up tolling, it kind of pisses a lot of people off, I have to tell you right now.
Oh, sure, definitely. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Especially if you had been told that the money was there to build it, type thing. Because that from what I've started to working from ODOT, and even kind of following this, I used to work for Tualatin outside of this, is that when you had the HB 2017 a few years ago, when the big transportation bill passed in Oregon that raised the payroll taxes to pay for all these transportation improvements, that the I-205 area, the bridge and the third lane was identified as a need, but it was everything that I've been told is that it was then unfunded though. And so the piece was like, well, where is ODOT going to find those dollars to construct it? And so the plan now that I apologize. I wasn't here. I don't know that history of it, but the plan that is today is that to get those improvements, to get that bridge, the way you do that is you use tolling to pay back those bonds. Basically, you take out to construct it.
Most of the majority of the people think the tolling is just a giant tax scheme, and I believe it is. The money's been there. The money should be there. We've had our meetings. I can put you in touch with the people after I look them up from our last meeting. But I'm sorry, but we had the state police there. We had everybody there. You even had the Channel 2 there. And so it's all on tape. It's all on video if we go back to the archives. So I want to know where that money went.
Sure. And maybe you and I can connect up with this and we can talk about kind of who that was or what meeting you're talking to. I just know kind of where we're at today type thing.
And Garrett, sorry to interrupt, but we have about 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to know as well. So if I could be part of that meeting, I think I mentioned in the chat, this is all new to me. I wasn't aware that this was happening, and I'm pretty angry about this, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you've been publicizing this, but I feel like this is, with everything going on, this is kind of flying under the radar.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just super grateful that you took some time out to come here today. And what you do, Amanda, whether it's just this one conversation or just kind of our ongoing work, if you want to send me an email again or contact here our ODOT team, we'll connect with you and make sure we get you that information, because we're always continuing to search to get more knowledge of this out there so people can at least understand it. Now, whether you agree or disagree with it, I'm not here to kind of I would love, if you were in favor, but I'm not going to expect that. I know there's going to be a lot of concerns with it, but at least I want to get you the information that what's happening and when it's happening, when those decisions will be made.
I have another one. Then why did you put those surveys out and they were so one-sided? Why don't you just flat out ask the people, do you want this or you don't want it? All those surveys questions were designed to make you guys look good, and nobody wants those. They're hard to answer because there's no right answer when you're not for it.
Mm-hmm. I know, and I hear you, Steve. I would say this though. I think we have been, ODOT's in the place where the legislature now and elected officials at the state have directed us to do tolling in the Portland area and on the I-205 bridge. And so
people don't want it. Take a vote. You'll find people do not want it.
So I understand what you're saying. And so it's part of the legislative process. So if you have concerns about it, you don't want it, it can go to it's been directed by the legislature. So we're here to try to make it as most equitable and helpful. So I hear your comments, Steve. I'm going to go on to somebody else because I do understand that you're frustrated.
Give us the legislature's name. Give us the people that are for this so we can vote them out of the legislature then. They are supposed to be representing the people, just like you. You are to represent the people of Oregon and this area. This is not happening. Amanda flat out clearly told you nobody knows about this except for a short few. This has to be taken care of. That's not the way to go about it. And this roundabout's not the way to go about it. These guys are sick. Give it, put it on a vote.
So I would say, so if you need to help as far as contacting your legislator, that is the process. Yes, that is who you need to contact if you're concerned about it.
Which legislature are we supposed to contact?
Send me an email. I find where we can coordinate on where you live, and I can send you the legislators.
Hey, Garrett, I'm going to go ahead and send you an email, so I don't want to take a lot of time up here. I know we only have a few minutes, but I'm looking at things in the chat, and I think there is a lot of concerns about the impacts to tolling the bridge, the old Oregon City Bridge. I'm concerned about that too. Is there still options that look at tolling both I-205 and the Oregon City Bridge, or are we looking at just 205? I'm just kind of plugging in on the details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think there is a place because the equity committee, that meeting today is really focused on low income impacts and not on the diversion impacts and the concerns that we're seeing here in the chat. And so I think there is other space that we need to kind of dive into those. What you're going to see happen there are 2 tolling projects going on. One is specific for the I-205 area. So it's going to look at the Abernathy Bridge and the Tualatin Bridge and what tolls would be looking at an impact there. And that study is going to take, it's been going on for close to a year now. It's going to take another 4 to 6 months to complete. And then it's another year and a half for the toll rate to be set. So there's even further review that goes through that. Then at the same time, what's being studied is the regional tolling project, which looks at all of I-5 between kind of the Columbia River crossing the interstate bridge, and includes, and then down to and including Boone Bridge. And then all of the all the basically remaining sections of I-205 in the Portland metro area. So going up to the Columbia River, connecting to the I-5-205 split. So you'll see one study of tolling just for 205, and then you'll see a second study of that larger footprint coming after it in that similar timeframe.
Yeah, the one that Metro is looking at is really looking at concepts throughout the region for tolling, but also beyond tolling, also parking prices and a number of other things. So it's a little bit broader and not so specific about where to toll.
Yeah, the Metro was, like you're saying, it's more broader. And then the ODOT studies that are going to come through are much more defined on the actual footprint and what will be studied in there.
And as far as the low income, because I know you want to talk about low income a little bit, and we're probably already out of time, but you know, Westland's thought of as being more of a higher income place, but there is big pockets of lower income folks in Westland that will be impacted, particularly close to the freeway in the Willamette area, and different pockets along Highway 43. So just to kind of give you kind of some local knowledge of where I think some of the low income folks are at. And they would have a difficulty in paying any kind of tolls going across to their employment opportunities on the east side.
Excellent. Yeah, and I say in our last minute kind of here as we wrap up, and thanks Scott for the time and comment. There are, so when we talk about like low income or equity communities, it's not a very broad term, like we're being specific about where we're looking at. So in our last meeting, and I can resend it to you all if you reach out to me, information on where we're specifically mapping low income and where are those pockets within Oregon City, within Westland, within Gladstone and Canby. So we're not just kind of taking the broad brush view, we're really trying to drill down into where are those specific populations. And then once tolling goes in place, how can there be those discounts, exemptions, or investments to make sure that those transportation needs are being met?
Hey, ask
So,
Big issue.
Yep. So sorry, Paul. I've got to wrap up and jump back to the group because we're out of time here for our breakout group. But I do really thank everybody for taking time out of your day here. I know some of this was more focused around low income, so I didn't get to all your questions or concerns. But if you could just, again, get in contact with myself or our toll team, we'll make sure we can have that more kind of personalized and one-on-one talk to work through your questions. So thank you so much.
I sent you an email today.
Yep. I got it, Paul.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.